A British national who was a member of ISIS and convicted for torturing and murdering American hostages has been sentenced to life in prison by a U.S. court. Reporter Benji Heyer is in Washington with the latest on this story. So Benji, let's start with a reminder of the details of this case.
Artie, this man, aged 34, Shafee Elsheikh, was a member of that Islamic State group that was called the Beatles, a nickname given their British accents, which about a decade ago became famous for beheading and executing captives in both Iraq and Syria. You might remember some of those horrific clips circling from the time. And they killed a number of British volunteers, American aid workers, American journalists, and it's only now that the sentencing has occurred in a court in Alexandria in Virginia, right across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., where the jury was told that this man played a central role in a brutal hostage-taking scheme. He'd been described as the main group main group member as part of those Beatles, the Guard, and also someone that was responsible for what they call most of the torture. He was given a life sentence today following his conviction back in April, because essentially the 8 counts that he was guilty of are going to be served and run concurrently, kind of back to back, and therefore building up to what would effectively be a life behind bars. There was a potential for there to be a death sentence. However, American prosecutors have told British officials, note this man obviously was formerly a British citizen, that the death penalty will not be an end objective, and this sentencing is now the final judgment.
So now, what's the reaction to today's sentence so far?
Well, it's pretty mixed, if I may be fair. We've already had some reaction come in, mainly from family members. There's a couple of quotes which stand out. The mother of the American journalist that was killed, James Foley, says that the sentencing is a hollow victory, but it does show, she says, that US justice will find you wherever you are. And pretty apt words from her as well, given that this is exactly the 8th anniversary of her son's beheading. What you also have, though, is reaction from one of the brothers of the British volunteer, David Haynes, that was killed. And his brother Mike says the judgment provides another victory for humanity over hateful ideologies of extremism. He goes on to say that while the verdict provides no consolation for David's life, it does send a powerful message to those tempted to follow the same destructive path. And then something quite powerful, if I may say, which is he says, I offer Elsheikh my forgiveness, and I sincerely hope that he uses his time in incarceration to recognise the pain he has inflicted. So those sentiments from the brother of one of those that were killed, but still a significant amount of emotion and anger from the family members as this trial took place not far from Washington, D.C., and potentially relief that this man has finally been sentenced.
Thanks for this, Benji. That is reporter Benji Heyer in Washington.